Recognizing the pattern of pain is the first and most crucial step in letting go of someone who hurts you. Why? Because you can't change what you don't acknowledge. Oh, so many people stay stuck in painful relationships, not because they're weak, but because they keep telling themselves it's just a rough patch, or everyone makes mistakes. They hold on to isolated moments of happiness, and they use those moments as justification for staying, even when the overall pattern is toxic. But here's the truth most people don't want to admit. It's not about how good it can be with this person. It's about how bad it often is. The relationship you have most of the time is the real relationship. Everything else is a highlight reel that you've been using to emotionally survive. You need to stop evaluating someone based on their potential or their best moments, and start evaluating them based on their pattern of behavior. Think of it like a song on repeat. If every time it plays, it brings up sadness, anxiety, self-doubt, or emotional exhaustion, then that's not a one-time fluke. That's a playlist you've chosen to keep hitting play on. And until you press stop, you'll keep dancing to a rhythm that's slowly wearing you down. Ask yourself this: how do I consistently feel after interacting with this person? Are you left questioning yourself, feeling drained or walking on eggshells? Or do you feel safe, uplifted, and respected? The answers are in your emotional residue, the leftovers of every interaction. Those leftovers tell a deeper truth than the occasional apology or sweet gesture ever could. We tend to overestimate words and underestimate patterns. Someone can say, "I love you," but if that love leaves you anxious, broken, or never enough, then that's not love. That's emotional dependency dressed up as connection. People will hurt us sometimes. Yes, we're human, but when the hurt becomes the norm, when the apology is just a prelude to the next wound, you're no longer in a relationship. You're in a cycle. It's not about blaming. It's about being honest. When someone repeatedly shows you who they are through their actions, your job is not to explain it away. It's to listen. Because deep down, you already know. You just haven't given yourself permission to fully trust that knowing. Once you recognize the pattern of pain, the spell begins to break. You stop hoping for the miracle moment when they'll suddenly become the person you need. You stop falling for crumbs because you realize you're starving. You begin to understand that staying is no longer an act of love. It's an act of self-betrayal. So don't just ask, does this person love me? Ask, does this person consistently make me feel loved, safe, and respected? That's the difference between temporary affection and long-term harm. When you start to see the pattern clearly, you're not just seeing them differently. You're finally starting to choose you. Letting go becomes possible when you stop negotiating with reality. This is one of the hardest, most heartbreaking truths to accept, because it means letting go, not just of a person, but of the version of them you had built in your head. Often we stay in pain not because someone is actively hurting us in the present, but because we're still emotionally attached to the idea of who they could be. We hold on to potential. We hold on to hope. We tell ourselves stories like, they didn't mean it, or they're just going through something, or if I just love them enough, they'll change. But here's the brutal truth. Who someone could be does not excuse who they consistently are. You cannot keep rewriting the script of someone's actions in your mind to fit the ending you want. Reality is not something to be negotiated with. It is something to be seen, acknowledged, and acted upon. The pain isn't just in the relationship, it's in the resistance to what is real. When someone shows up in ways that are inconsistent, hurtful, dismissive, or emotionally unavailable, and you continue to hope that tomorrow will be different, you're not in love, you're in denial. That denial becomes the very prison you keep yourself locked inside. It's not that you're foolish or weak, it's that you've invested emotionally in a vision. You fell for the potential, not the pattern. You saw glimpses of greatness. Maybe they were charming, maybe they said all the right things, maybe in the beginning they made you feel special in a way no one else did. But those glimpses are not the full picture, they're just flashes. And flashes, by nature, are temporary. You cannot build a healthy relationship on flashes of effort. You need consistency, you need truth, you need action that backs up intention. So many people stay stuck because they believe that they just try harder. They can get the relationship to be what it was in the beginning. But the beginning wasn't necessarily real. It was the honeymoon, the highlight reel, the version of them they wanted you to see. What you've seen consistently since then, that's the reality. That's the baseline. And trying to negotiate with that, to force it to change by shrinking yourself or staying longer than you should, only leads to more disappointment. Acceptance doesn't mean you're okay with what happened. It doesn't mean you agree with their behavior. It means you've stopped fighting the truth. You've stopped waiting for a different outcome from someone who's already shown you who they are. You're no longer begging for love in a place where it's not being given freely. You're choosing to stand in the discomfort of truth rather than the illusion of hope. And in that moment when you stop negotiating with what you wish it was and face what it actually is, that's when freedom begins. Holding on to someone who hurts you isn't just an emotional choice. It's an energetic investment. And like any investment, it comes with a cost. The longer you hold on, the more you pay. But unlike financial debt, this kind of emotional cost is subtle. It doesn't show up in your bank account. It shows up in your self-worth, your peace of mind, your mental clarity, your future goals, your sleep, and your relationships with others. The cost of staying emotionally attached to someone who is not good for you is higher than most people realize. You might think you're just giving it more time or waiting for things to get better, but every day you spend waiting is a day you're not healing. Every hour you spend thinking about what went wrong is an hour you're not building what's next. There is a version of you that is being delayed, muted, or pushed aside because your energy is still tied to someone who doesn't deserve that level of access to your life anymore. When you stay in an unhealthy emotional attachment, you're constantly in survival mode. You overthink everything, second-guess your instincts, and shrink yourself to maintain some form of connection. You put your emotional well-being on hold to protect a relationship that isn't protecting you. That effort alone, the emotional labor of constantly adjusting, explaining, forgiving, and hoping, drains your spirit. And that drain isn't temporary. It slowly chips away at your confidence, your self-trust, and your sense of identity. Let's be honest, holding on feels familiar. It feels safer than letting go because at least you know the pain you're in. The idea of leaving, detaching, or moving on feels like standing on the edge of something unknown. But just because something feels familiar doesn't mean it's good for you. Pain can be familiar too. So can manipulation. So can emotional abandonment. Familiarity is not the same as safety. Every time you excuse someone's harmful behavior or downplay your own needs to keep the peace, you're sending a signal to your brain that you don't matter as much. And the more you do that, the more you reinforce the belief that this is the best you can get, that love is supposed to hurt, that this is normal. But it's not normal. It's not healthy. And it's definitely not love. Ask yourself, what is it costing me to stay emotionally connected to this person? What parts of my life are being paused or postponed because my energy is still wrapped around this dynamic? What have I stopped dreaming about, pursuing or believing in because I've been so consumed by this relationship? When you finally get honest about the cost, something shifts. Stunning shift. You stop justifying the pain and start recognizing that your peace is non-negotiable. You start to understand that letting go isn't a loss, it's an investment in your future, in your healing, in your joy, and that's a price worth paying. One of the most misunderstood concepts in healing is the idea of closure. So many people delay their healing because they're waiting for it, waiting for an apology, waiting for an explanation, waiting for the other person to finally admit what they did, to take responsibility, or to make it all make sense. And the truth is, that moment may never come. Closure is not something someone else gives you. It's something you create for yourself. When someone has hurt you, your mind naturally seeks resolution. You replay conversations, analyze every word, and wonder what you could have done differently. You try to find a point where it all went wrong, hoping that if you just understand it enough, the pain will disappear. But most of the time, the person who hurt you isn't thinking about it the way you are. They're not sitting with the same weight. They may have moved on. They may not even be aware or care about the depth of the damage they caused. That's one of the hardest pills to swallow. The person who broke you might not be the one who helps you heal. And when you're waiting on them to give you the ending you feel you deserve, you're giving them even more power. You're tying your healing to their actions, their words, their timing. But healing isn't about them anymore. It's about you. Closure doesn't come in a neatly wrapped conversation. It doesn't always come with tears and mutual understanding. Often, it comes in a quiet moment when you decide, I don't need anything else from them to move forward. It comes when you stop looking outside of yourself for validation and start trusting your own experience. You don't need someone to confirm they hurt you for your pain to be valid. You felt it. That's enough. Sometimes the real closure is recognizing that you were never going to get what you needed from that person. Even if you stayed longer, even if you tried harder, even if you waited more patiently. And with that realization, you can stop chasing explanations and start giving yourself the peace that person never could. You can write your own ending. You can say, this was not okay. I deserved better. And I'm done waiting for them to understand that. That is power. That is self-respect. That is real closure. And in time, what once consumed your thoughts will begin to quiet. What once felt like an open wound will begin to close, not because they finally gave you what you needed, but because you finally gave it to yourself. You don't need a perfect conclusion to start a new chapter. You just need the courage to stop rereading the last one. That's when you take your power back. That's when healing begins, not because they changed, but because you did. One of the most painful traps we fall into after being hurt by someone is the belief that their treatment of us reflects our worth. It's easy to internalize rejection, betrayal, or neglect and turn it into a story about ourselves. If I were enough, they wouldn't have done this. Or maybe I'm too much. Or maybe I wasn't lovable enough, attractive enough, interesting enough. But the truth is, how someone treats you says far more about them than it does about you. Your value doesn't decrease because someone couldn't love you properly. Their inability to see your worth does not mean that worth doesn't exist. It simply means they weren't capable or willing to meet you at the level you deserved. And that's not something you need to change about yourself. That's something they need to own, and most often they won't. But you still don't have to carry the weight of their emotional immaturity. When someone mistreats you, when they ignore your needs, belittle your feelings, lie, cheat, or manipulate, it's not a sign that you are unworthy. It's a sign that they are emotionally limited or unwilling to rise to the level of love, respect, and communication a healthy connection requires. Yet too many of us take their actions personally. We try harder, we overcompensate, we shrink ourselves, hoping that if we just become more of what they want, they'll finally see our value. But that only reinforces a toxic dynamic where your self-esteem becomes dependent on someone who's already shown you they can't handle it with care. The people who hurt you aren't judges of your value. They are often mirrors of their own unresolved pain, trauma, and limitations. And the more you try to prove your worth to someone who can't see it, the further you drift from remembering who you really are. You start outsourcing your identity to someone else's broken lens. Healing means taking that power back. It means reminding yourself that your value is inherent, not something to be earned through someone else's approval. It means you stop asking, why wasn't I enough for them? And start asking, why was I trying so hard to be enough for someone who couldn't even meet me halfway? Your worth is not determined by how someone treats you at their worst. Your worth is steady, constant, and rooted in who you are, your heart, your integrity, your strength. It doesn't rise and fall with someone else's moods, choices, or capacity to love. Let that truth be the foundation you rebuild. Because the moment you stop measuring your value by someone else's behavior is the moment you begin to heal, not just from what they did, but from the belief that their treatment ever had the power to define you. Detachment doesn't happen all at once. It's not a switch you flip. It's a process of reclaiming your focus piece by piece. When someone has hurt you deeply, it's normal to feel like your thoughts are consumed by them. You find yourself replaying conversations, rereading messages, analyzing everything they said or didn't say. They live in your head long after they've stopped showing up in your life. And the most frustrating part? You know it's not healthy, but it feels impossible to stop. The reason detachment is so difficult is because you're not just letting go of a person, you're letting go of the story you built around them. You're letting go of hopes of what could have been, of the vision you had for your future together. That vision becomes a kind of emotional gravity, constantly pulling your thoughts back toward them. But emotional freedom begins the moment you understand that you don't have to answer every thought. Just because a memory appears doesn't mean you have to feed it. Just because they cross your mind doesn't mean they deserve your energy. Detachment starts with awareness. Catch yourself in the moment when your mind drifts back to them. And instead of judging yourself or spiraling into another analysis, gently bring your focus back. Think of your focus like a muscle. Every time you redirect your attention, whether it's to your goals, your self-care, your passions, you're strengthening that muscle. And over time, the pull toward them weakens. This doesn't mean suppressing your feelings or pretending you're fine when you're not. It means consciously choosing where your emotional energy goes. You can acknowledge the pain without letting it dictate your every move. You can feel the sadness without letting it sabotage your growth. One of the most powerful ways to detach is by creating new meaning. Every time you catch yourself obsessing over them, ask, what is this thought costing me? What could I be focusing on instead? Then make a small shift. Go for a walk. Oh, call a friend. Write something. Move your body. Move your mind. Choose action over rumination. Choose presence over the past. Another important part of detachment is boundaries, not just with them, but with yourself. If you're constantly checking their social media, rereading old texts, or keeping them emotionally alive through your routines, you're feeding the connection. Cut those access points. Block if you need to. Unfollow, archive the messages. Not out of spite, but out of self-respect. Protect your peace like it's sacred, because it is. Detachment isn't coldness. It's clarity. It's no longer letting someone occupy space in your life they haven't earned. It's saying, I deserve to be free. And freedom doesn't always start with a grand, dramatic goodbye. Sometimes it starts with the quiet, consistent decision to pull your energy back, thought by thought, day by day, until one day you realize they no longer live in your mind. Setting healthy boundaries is one of the most empowering steps you can take when letting go of someone who hurts you. Boundaries aren't just rules you put on others. They're agreements you make with yourself about what you will and won't accept. When you set a boundary, you're telling yourself, I matter, my feelings matter, my peace matters. And that's a powerful shift from being reactive to being proactive in your own healing. So many people struggle with boundaries because they've been conditioned to believe that saying no or standing firm is selfish, unkind, or will push people away. But here's the thing, boundaries aren't about pushing people away. They're about creating space for respect and genuine connection. When you allow someone to cross your boundaries repeatedly, you're actually inviting disrespect and pain into your life. Setting limits teaches others how to treat you. It's a form of self-love and self-respect. Healthy boundaries can look different depending on the situation. Sometimes it means limiting or ending contact with someone who consistently hurts you. Other times it means speaking up when something isn't okay, even if it's uncomfortable. It means saying no to conversations that drain you or to behaviors that trigger old wounds. It means prioritizing your emotional safety above the fear of confrontation or rejection. Setting boundaries also involves recognizing your limits. It means paying attention to how certain interactions affect you and not ignoring red flags just to keep the peace. You don't have to tolerate emotional manipulation, gaslighting, or neglect in the name of love or loyalty. Those things aren't love, they're control, and you deserve better than control disguised as affection. When you enforce boundaries, you may face resistance, guilt, pushback, or even attempts to guilt trip you into lowering your standards. That's normal. People who are used to crossing your boundaries might feel threatened or angry. But remember, your boundaries aren't about them. They're about your well-being. You don't need anyone's permission to protect your heart. Boundaries are also about consistency. It's not enough to set a boundary once and then let it slide. You have to hold your ground again and again. This builds your confidence and sends a clear message. I will not settle for less than I deserve. Over time, this consistency rewires your relationships and helps you attract healthier connections. Most importantly, boundaries give you clarity. When you know what you will and won't accept, you no longer have to guess if a relationship is good for you. You stop hoping that things will change and start recognizing when it's time to walk away. Boundaries help you regain control over your emotional world, and in doing so, they create the space for healing and growth. So setting boundaries isn't just a defense mechanism, it's a declaration. It's saying to yourself and the world, I am worthy of respect, love, and peace. And I will protect that at all costs. That's the kind of strength that transforms pain into power and heartbreak into hope. Healing from someone who hurt you isn't about rushing to forget or erase the past. It's about learning to be gentle with yourself through the process. Far too often, people believe that moving on means shutting down their feelings, suppressing the pain, or pretending they're okay when they're not. But true healing comes from embracing your emotions fully, not avoiding them. It means allowing yourself to feel the hurt, the anger, the sadness, the confusion, all without judgment or shame. When you've been hurt, your heart needs time to process what happened. It's like a wound that needs to be cleaned and cared for before it can close properly. If you rush to move on without acknowledging your pain, it will stay beneath the surface, festering and influencing your thoughts, decisions, and future relationships. Healing requires patience, self-compassion, and a willingness to sit with discomfort. It's also important to understand that healing is not linear. You won't feel better every day, and that's okay. Some days will be harder than others. You might feel like you've taken huge steps forward only to be knocked back by memories, triggers, or unexpected emotions. This doesn't mean you're failing. It means you're human. One of the biggest gifts you can give yourself during healing is permission to feel without rushing to fix or change those feelings. Cry when you need to cry. Journal your thoughts. Talk to someone you trust. Express your emotions in ways that feel safe and authentic. This isn't weakness, it's strength. At the same time, healing means learning to reframe your story. Instead of seeing yourself as a victim of someone else's actions, start to see yourself as a survivor, someone who is growing, learning, and becoming stronger through adversity. This shift in mindset doesn't erase the pain, but it empowers you to take control of your narrative. Healing also involves forgiving, not necessarily the person who hurt you, but yourself. Forgive yourself for any mistakes you feel you made, for any time you ignored your own needs, or for staying longer than you should have. Self-forgiveness frees you from guilt and regret, which are often the heaviest burdens to carry. Lastly, healing is a process of rediscovery. As you let go of the pain, you begin to reconnect with who you are beyond the relationship, the dreams, the passions, the strengths that may have been buried. This is the space where true growth happens. You rebuild your life on your own terms with new boundaries, new clarity, and a renewed sense of self-worth. Healing isn't quick or easy, but it's possible, and it's worth it. Because on the other side of pain is a version of you who is freer, stronger, and more whole than ever before. Rebuilding your identity after being hurt by someone is a crucial part of letting go and moving forward. Often when we invest deeply in a relationship, especially one that's painful or toxic, we lose sight of who we really are outside of that connection. Our sense of self becomes tangled up with the other person's approval, expectations, and presence. And when that relationship ends or becomes unhealthy, it feels like you're left with a void, uncertain about who you are without them. Your value exists independently of the roles you played in the relationship, whether that was the caregiver, the fixer, the peacemaker, or the person always trying to prove their love. You are not defined by how someone else treated you or by how much effort you gave. You are a whole person on your own. Rebuilding your identity means reconnecting with your passions, interests, and goals that may have been pushed aside or forgotten. Think about what made you feel alive before this relationship took over your emotional space. What hobbies did you enjoy? What dreams did you hold? Sometimes letting go means rediscovering those parts of yourself and giving them room to grow again. It's about nurturing your individuality and realizing that you don't need someone else's validation to feel complete. It's also about challenging any negative beliefs that have taken root because of the hurt. After being hurt, it's common to carry messages like, "I'm not good enough," or "I'll never find love," or "I'm broken." These are lies that need to be dismantled. Rebuilding your identity involves replacing those harmful narratives with affirmations rooted in truth. You are enough as you are. Enough. You are worthy of love and respect. You are capable of joy and growth. This process also calls for self-compassion. Be patient with yourself as you navigate feelings of loss and confusion. Reclaiming your identity is not about rushing to a move on, but about gently nurturing your sense of self day by day. Celebrate small wins like spending time alone without feeling lonely, setting boundaries, or making decisions that honor your needs. Surrounding yourself with supportive people who see and celebrate your true self can make a significant difference. Whether it's friends, family, or a therapist, having a community that reinforces your worth and encourages your growth helps rebuild your confidence and reminds you that you are not defined by your past pain. Ultimately, reclaiming your identity after being hurt is an act of courage and self-love. It's a declaration that your story is not over, that you have the power to define who you are and who you want to be. And when you rebuild from this place of authenticity, you create a foundation not just for healing, but for thriving. Forgiveness is one of the most misunderstood and challenging steps in the process of letting go from someone who has hurt you. Many people think forgiveness means forgetting what happened or excusing the behavior that caused the pain. But forgiveness is much deeper and far more powerful than that. It's a gift you give yourself, a way to free your heart and mind from the heavy burden of resentment and anger. Holding on to bitterness and grudges keeps you tethered to the past, replaying the hurt over and over in your mind. It's like carrying a weight that slows you down, drains your energy, and clouds your ability to see a future beyond the pain. Forgiveness doesn't mean you condone what was done to you, and it certainly doesn't mean you have to reconcile or maintain a relationship with the person who hurt you. It means you're choosing to release the grip their actions have on your life. This process begins with acknowledging your pain fully and honestly. You need to validate your feelings without minimizing them or pretending you're okay when you're not. Forgiveness is not about rushing to let go before you're ready. It's about arriving at a place where you no longer want your anger to control you. Forgiveness also means recognizing that everyone, ourselves included, is imperfect and capable of mistakes, sometimes even hurtful ones. This understanding doesn't justify bad behavior, but it allows compassion to enter the picture. Compassion for the other person's humanity, their own struggles, and limitations can soften the edge of your pain. It doesn't erase what happened, but shifts your relationship with it. Importantly, forgiveness is a choice you make for your own well-being. You reclaim your peace by deciding that your past no longer defines your present. When you forgive, you stop reliving the hurt and begin opening space for healing and growth. You're no longer a prisoner to the past, but a traveler moving forward with greater strength and clarity. It's also vital to be patient with yourself throughout this journey. Forgiveness is rarely instantaneous. It can take time to fully let go of resentment, especially if the wounds run deep. Some days will feel like progress. Others might bring back old pain. That's natural and part of the process. Finally, forgiveness transforms you. It doesn't just free you from pain. It teaches you about resilience, grace, and the power of love in its purest form, love that frees rather than confines. When you forgive, you reclaim your power and create the possibility for a future not defined by the hurt, but by your ability to rise above it. Choosing to focus on your own growth after being hurt is one of the most transformative decisions you can make. When someone causes you pain, it's easy to get stuck in a cycle of blaming, hurt, and frustration. But growth invites you to shift your perspective from seeing yourself as a victim to seeing yourself as a learner, a survivor, and ultimately, a stronger person. Growth after hurt means looking at what happened not just as a source of pain, but as an opportunity for self-discovery. It's about asking yourself tough questions. What did I learn about my needs, about my boundaries, about what I will no longer tolerate? These questions aren't meant to blame or shame, but to empower you to understand yourself more deeply. This awareness is the foundation for healthier relationships in the future. When you focus on growth, you begin to see that pain doesn't have to define you. Instead, it can be the soil from which your resilience and wisdom bloom. You develop emotional strength by processing your feelings rather than suppressing them, by choosing to act in your best interest even when it's hard, and by setting standards for how you want to be treated going forward. Growth also means investing in yourself in ways you may have neglected while caught up in the relationship. It could be pursuing hobbies, developing new skills, or dedicating time to your physical and mental well-being. When you prioritize your growth, you rebuild your confidence and reclaim your sense of identity. An important part of growth is embracing vulnerability. Healing and personal development require honesty with yourself about your wounds and your fears. It's okay to admit you don't have all the answers. It's okay to ask for support. This openness allows you to connect more deeply with others and fosters genuine healing. Additionally, growth means practicing forgiveness, not just toward others, but toward yourself. You may carry regrets or guilt about things you did or didn't do in the relationship. Growth invites you to release those burdens and treat yourself with kindness and understanding. Focusing on growth also means setting goals that align with the person you want to become, not the one defined by past pain. These goals create a sense of purpose and direction, reminding you that your future is still full of possibility. Ultimately, choosing growth is about reclaiming your power. It's about saying, this experience hurt me, but I will not let it break me. I will use it to build a stronger, wiser, more compassionate version of myself. When you commit to growth, you transform hurt into hope, pain into progress, and loss into a new beginning. Letting go is a process that often requires patience and persistence, especially when it comes to someone who has hurt you deeply. It's not a single moment of decision, but a series of choices you make every day to reclaim your peace and your life. Sometimes the hardest part isn't the initial break or the decision to walk away. It's staying committed to that decision when emotions pull you back in. Healing and detachment happen gradually. There will be days when you feel strong and certain, and others when doubt, longing, or sadness sneak back in. This is completely normal. The human heart doesn't heal in a straight line. It moves like waves, sometimes advancing, sometimes retreating, but always moving toward greater calm. Persistence in letting go means you show up for yourself even when it's difficult. It means choosing to focus on your well-being when your mind wants to revisit the past. It means practicing self-care and self-compassion when you feel vulnerable or lonely. Each time you choose yourself over the pain, you reinforce the new path you're creating. Patience with yourself is equally important. You may want to feel healed overnight, but emotional recovery takes time. Sometimes letting go means sitting with uncomfortable feelings without rushing to fix them. It means allowing yourself space to grieve the loss of what you hoped for, the dreams you had, and the version of the relationship you wanted to be real. It also means recognizing that setbacks don't mean failure. If you find yourself reaching out, thinking about them more than you want to, or feeling emotional turmoil again, it doesn't erase the progress you've made. Each setback is an opportunity to practice kindness toward yourself and reaffirm your commitment to healing. Consistency in your actions is what transforms letting go from a fleeting thought into a lasting reality. This could mean maintaining boundaries, removing reminders that trigger pain, or actively engaging in activities that support your growth and peace. The more consistent you are, the more you train your heart and mind to release old attachments. Surrounding yourself with support, friends, family, or professionals can provide encouragement and perspective along the way. Sometimes simply knowing you're not alone in the process can make all the difference. Ultimately, letting go is a gift you give yourself. It's the act of reclaiming your emotional freedom and choosing a future not defined by hurt, but by hope. With patience and persistence, you build resilience. You cultivate peace, and you open the door to new possibilities, new relationships, and a new chapter that honors the strength it took to let go and the courage it takes to keep going. Letting go of someone who has hurt you is one of the most courageous and transformative journeys you can undertake. It's not about forgetting or pretending the pain never existed. It's about reclaiming your power, your worth, and your peace. Throughout this process, you learn to separate your value from someone else's actions, to set boundaries that protect your heart, and to detach your focus from what no longer serves you. You embrace healing with patience and compassion, rebuild your identity with clarity and strength, and choose forgiveness as a way to free yourself rather than to excuse harm. Most importantly, you commit to your own growth, allowing pain to become a catalyst for resilience and wisdom. Letting go requires persistence and kindness toward yourself, knowing that healing is a journey with ups and downs. But as you choose yourself again and again, you open the door to a future filled with hope, freedom, and the possibility of deeper, healthier love. Remember, the greatest act of love you can give is the love you show yourself by letting go and moving forward.